Picture this. You do everything right with your money. You save every month. You don't touch it. You feel proud watching that number grow. Then one day you check the interest you earned this year. $40. On $15,000 you didn't touch for 12 months. You made less than the cost of a decent dinner. So here's the question. If saving is supposed to be the responsible thing to do, why does it feel like you're not actually getting anywhere? And more importantly, what's the real step-by-step path to turn that pile of safe money into money that actually grows? Stick around, because by the end of this video you'll know exactly how to make that jump without gambling your financial safety net. Let's talk about Danny. Danny is 27. He's not reckless with money, actually the opposite. He packs lunch instead of buying it. He has 3 savings goals labeled in his banking app. For years, that felt like enough. Then one day his coworker mentions, almost casually, that his index fund is up 11% this year. Danny does the math on his own savings and realizes his money grew slower than the office printer's toner budget. And that's when the panic sets in. Because Danny doesn't know what to do next. Every time he searches how to start investing, he gets buried in jargon, expense ratios, asset allocation, dollar cost averaging, and he closes the tab more confused than when he opened it. This is the exact moment millions of people get stuck. Not because they're bad with money. Not because they're lazy. They were simply never shown the bridge between saving and investing. So they either freeze completely or panic and throw money into something risky just to finally start. But the real reason this happens is much bigger than you think. Here's the mental trap almost everyone falls into. They think investing is just saving, but better. It's not. Saving and investing are 2 completely different jobs, with 2 completely different goals. Savings job is protection. Its entire purpose is making sure your money is still there tomorrow, exactly as it was today. Investing's job is growth. Its purpose is making your money bigger over time, which means it has to be allowed to move, sometimes up, sometimes down. Think of it like hiring 2 employees. One employee's only task is to guard a locked door and never let anyone touch what's inside. The other employee's job is to take some of what's inside, go out into the world, and try to multiply it. You'd never fire the guard for not making you money. That's not his job. And you'd never be shocked if the multiplier comes back with a scraped knee. That's the cost of the job he's doing. Most people only ever hire the guard. And here's the problem. A guard, no matter how good, can't make you rich. He can only make sure you don't get poorer. Here's a number that surprises almost everyone the first time they see it. Say inflation runs at a modest 3% a year, roughly the long-run average. If your money sits in a savings account earning less than that, you're not actually staying safe. You're losing purchasing power every single year, just slowly enough that you don't notice. $10,000 sitting in a low-interest account for 10 years might still say $10,000 on the screen. But what that money can actually buy has quietly shrunk. It's like keeping ice in a cooler with the lid slightly open. It looks basically fine for a while. You check on it, still looks like ice. But it's melting the entire time, and eventually you open the cooler and there's a lot less than you remember putting in. That's the scary part. Saving money doesn't feel like losing money, which is exactly why so many people never question it. And here's where most people make a mistake that quietly costs them years of growth. They think the fix is simple, just move everything into investments right away. It's not that simple, and rushing this part is exactly how people end up scared out of the market for good. So let's slow down and do this properly, step by step. Before any of this investing advice applies to you, there's a non-negotiable first step. A real emergency fund. Somewhere between 3 and 6 months of your actual living expenses, sitting in cash, untouched, boring on purpose. Here's why this step gets skipped constantly, and why skipping it wrecks people. The single biggest reason beginners lose money investing isn't bad picks. It's bad timing forced by an emergency. Car breaks down, job gets cut, medical bill shows up, and if your only money is tied up in investments, you're forced to sell, possibly at the worst possible moment, just to survive the month. Your emergency fund's entire job is to make sure your future self never has to sell an investment out of panic. Remember this because it matters a lot later. This next step sounds almost too simple, which is exactly why people underestimate it. Once your emergency fund exists, mentally split every future dollar into 2 buckets. Safety money and growth money. Safety money doesn't move. It's not supposed to. Growth money is allowed to move because movement is literally the mechanism through which it grows. The reason this matters so much is emotional, not mathematical. A lot of new investors panic the first time their portfolio dips 8% in a month, because subconsciously they're still treating that money like it belongs in the safety bucket. Once you've mentally reassigned it to the growth bucket, a dip doesn't feel like an emergency. It feels like Tuesday. Now let's actually put a number on all of this, because this is where it gets interesting. Say you put $100 a month into a regular savings account earning 1% a year. After 30 years, you'd have around $42,000. Not bad for doing basically nothing risky. Now take that exact same $100 a month, same 30 years, but instead it goes into the market averaging 8% a year. You'd end up with roughly $149,000. Same person, same habit, same amount of money out of pocket. The only thing that changed is where the money was allowed to work. That gap, over $100,000, is the entire difference between saving and investing, sitting right there in front of you. Here's where things get interesting because this is the step that trips people up the most. Most beginners think investing requires thousands of dollars sitting around, so they wait for a bonus, a raise someday, and someday quietly turns into never. The truth is most modern brokerage apps let you start with an amount smaller than a grocery run. And that's actually the entire point at this stage. The goal of your first $50 or $100 isn't to get rich. It's to build a habit and get comfortable watching a number move without panicking. Think of it like learning to swim. Nobody's first lesson is in the deep end during a storm. You start in the shallow end, get used to the water moving around you, and only then go deeper. This is where a lot of beginners sabotage themselves without realizing it. They open their first investing app, see flashy individual stocks, crypto charts, options trading, and go straight for the most exciting-looking thing in the room. But here's the twist almost nobody expects. The most boring option on the menu is usually the one that performs best over time for regular people. Index funds, which basically bundle hundreds of companies into a single investment, have quietly outperformed most actively managed, exciting strategies over long stretches of time. Even Warren Buffett, arguably the most famous investor alive, has repeatedly told regular investors to put their money in low-cost index funds instead of trying to outguess the market. His advice for most people isn't complicated. Buy the boring thing and then leave it alone. Here's the step that actually makes the whole system work without relying on your willpower. Automation. Set up a recurring transfer into your investments the same way your rent or phone bill gets paid, automatically, without you having to decide to do it every single month. Let's run one more number. Someone investing $250 a month at an average 8% annual return ends up with roughly $237,000 after 25 years. But here's the part that shocks people every time. They only put in $75,000 of their own money across those 25 years. The other $162,000 came from growth alone. That's compounding doing the heavy lifting while you were busy living your life. This is where discipline quietly beats intelligence. You don't need to be a genius. You need to be consistent. But this isn't even the craziest part. Here's a myth that keeps otherwise smart people out of the market for years. The idea that a crash is the enemy of an investor. It's actually the opposite if you're investing consistently. When prices drop and you're still putting the same amount of money in every month, that same amount now buys more shares than it did before because they're cheaper. So when the market eventually recovers, and historically it always has, you own more of the recovery than you would have otherwise. And here's the statistic that makes this whole idea click. Every single major downturn in the stock market's history has, eventually, been followed by a full recovery. Every one. Not most. Not almost all. Every one so far. Investors who kept contributing steadily through the 2008 financial crisis, one of the scariest downturns in modern history, ended up significantly better off a decade later than investors who panicked, pulled out, and waited on the sidelines for things to feel safe again. The people who felt the least comfortable during the crash were often the ones who came out ahead. Markets going down isn't a sign you did something wrong. It's just the entry fee for the returns that come later. The scary part isn't the dip, it's stopping your contributions because of it. Alright, quick recap because this matters. Safety money stays put, growth money is allowed to breathe, small consistent amounts beat waiting for a big amount, boring investments tend to win, and automation removes the willpower problem entirely. Let's bring this back to Danny for a second. Once he understood this path, he didn't do anything dramatic. He didn't quit his job to day trade. He kept his emergency fund exactly where it was, opened a simple brokerage account, set up an automatic transfer for an amount that honestly felt almost too small to matter, and picked one boring index fund instead of chasing headlines. 2 years later, Danny still isn't rich. He's still the same guy packing his own lunch. But for the first time in his life, his money is actually working even while he sleeps. He finally stopped wondering if he was falling behind, because for once, he could see exactly where he stood, and exactly where he was headed. So here's the biggest lesson from all of this. Saving protects you, but only investing grows you, and trying to make saving alone do both jobs is why so many disciplined people still feel financially stuck. The biggest mistake to avoid: skipping your emergency fund to start investing faster. That single shortcut is responsible for more panic selling and regret than almost anything else in this video. And the one action you can take today, right now, before you close this app. Open your banking or brokerage app and check exactly one number: how many months of expenses your current savings would actually cover. That number alone tells you which step of this path you're standing on. 10 years from now, you'll either be glad you started investing today, or you'll wish you had. There's no third option. The uncomfortable truth is that both of those futures begin with the exact same decision, and you're standing in front of it right now. So here's a question worth sitting with before you go. If putting money into an index fund and forgetting about it can quietly out-earn most exciting strategies, why does almost nobody teach that in school? That's actually a much bigger, much stranger story about how financial education got left out of the system entirely, and that's exactly what we're breaking down next. If this helped you see the actual path forward, hit subscribe, because 10 years from now, this might be the video you remember as the one where it finally clicked.